kits now come with the tabs. The holes for the tabs are cut all the way through. So whenever you put the tabs in, this actually saves on building time, because now the spar gets locked in the wing and you don't have to glue it in place. The first step is to tape off the wing. So we run a piece of tape right down the center, and that's 2-inch packing tape. Run it right down the middle. And then the next piece of tape goes on the side here, and it goes from this point to this one all the way across. And then you lap it 1/8 inch all the way up. The 5th piece will be across the center. It should be just the other side of the center. And then you're going to turn this around, and you're going to do the same thing. Another one piece of tape here, and then the next piece lapping till you get to the 5th piece, which should put you over the center. Then you're going to fold it. And so what you're going to do is you take and bring it over and match the corners here and here and the edge, and you're going to hold it, and then you're going to mash it down. And you're going to look at it over here, make sure it's right, and you're going to mash it down. Then you're going to mash this really, really flat. I mean, put lots of pressure on it, mash it flat. Once you get it flat, then you look at it. And if this is not straight, if those edges don't line up, and you can see on this one it does, but if it didn't, then what you would do would be to take your X-Acto knife and trim the long side back, because you want this edge to be flat, and you want this edge to be flat, you want the tip to be flat, and you want the center here to be flat. All these edges should line up, and you can see there, it's perfect. And if it wasn't, you cut it, trim it till it is. Then set this one aside and do the next one. So you're going to bring it over, you're going to fold it over, and you're going to match the edge, and you're going to match the edge, and you're going to hold it there, and then you're going to mash it down. Mash it flat, straight. You will have to cut a little bit up here. It's going to stick out, so you trim that little bit there off. And then whenever you bring these together, they should come together like that. So now, once we get it taped off and we get it folded and we get it trimmed, now you're ready to start building. The way you build it is really simple. What we'll do is we'll find the top. The top will be, it'll have the holes in it for the battery compartment. So we locate the top on this side, which is here. Battery hole here and here. So we're going to tape this together. Just like this. And now we want to open it up, and you're going to epoxy this seam right here. Now I know where the holes are. I'm going to be cutting that area out. So I'm not going to epoxy this all the way down. I'm just going to go right to the holes, and then I'm going to stop. And here I'm going to go right to the end, and then I'm going to stop. Okay, after the center section has cured, then we want to remove the tape. Now go on to the next step. Now you have a choice. Whenever you build it, you can either build it to be a little stronger, or you can just build it to be built quick. If you build it to be a little stronger, then you can spray foam and put glue in this leading edge. The only downside to doing that is then you have to wait for that to set up before you can continue. Because once you glue this and you put the foam in, whenever you glue the trailing edge, you have to wait for the foam to cure before you can cut out the battery hatch. And at that point, you're ready to finish putting the model together. So now the next step is we're going to add a little more tape for reinforcement. I'm going to go across the holes for the battery compartment, or battery area, and I'm taking the tape, and I'm going to mash this down really well. I'm going to go from this hole to this one, across and just below these holes here, because this is where the battery compartment is going to be, from here to here. So I'm going to stay away from that because it's going to be cut out. And then I'm going to tape 1/8 of an inch and do the same thing again and run it over. And all this is going to do is just reinforce this area with some tape. So now I have 2 layers. I have here and here, and I've left this area here off because that's where the firewall is actually going to be glued in. So I don't want to put tape there. And I'll put a second layer, or a second piece of tape, right over the seam of the first 2 that I put down. So this is just reinforcing this area right here. So I have a piece of tape here, and a piece of tape here, and then another piece of tape right over the seam. So it's 3 pieces of tape in this area. Now I'm ready to install the spar. So what you can do is take your spar and pinch the tabs. Just pinch them so that you create a wedge shape, because that will expand back out after it's put in place. And then insert the spar into the notches. Again, I'm going to put them into the notches. So now I'm ready to fold this over. We've glued this piece here. That's the only thing I've glued so far. I'm going to use 5-minute epoxy, so I'm not really concerned about this leading edge, nor am I concerned about the foam. I want to build this, I want to just make it a quick builder, and you know, we'll go from there. Okay, now you can see that I've added the tape where I think I need to add it for the trailing edge so that I can get that glued up really good and taped down. Now I'm going to add the glue right on the trailing edge here. And this is a quick build, so I'm just using 5-minute epoxy. So I'm just going to run the bead down here, and then I'm going to use my mixing stick and spread it out a little bit. Now I want to tape this together. I'm going to be making sure that my spar goes in the pockets. And you just, whatever it takes to get the spars in the pocket, and you want to make sure that you get this edge, these edges lined up. And you can look real quick here and see that the spars are in good shape. They're all where they need to be. Now I need to put some tape here because I want to make sure I pull this tight. I'm not putting any glue in this seam yet. So what I'm going to do is pull this up and pull the tape together tight, because I want to pull this seam tight. Really important here. So I'm going to take a peek here, and anywhere I need to add more tape to hold the trailing edge together, I want to be sure and do that. Because here it's really important that this trailing edge comes together and stays together. Put weight on this side and weight on that side. And then I'm going to let this sit. The top is down and my weight is here. Okay, now I have the tape removed. So now we can take another look, and we can see that if I set this down, I got this about the same amount up on the centers, and it looks like the trailing edge is pretty close that way. So the next step now is going to be go ahead and glue the bottom, because if you recall, the bottom has not been glued yet. So this is the bottom piece here. So we're going to glue this seam all the way. We're going to put a thin layer, just a very thin layer of epoxy right on the seam. And this is the nice thing about the pastry bag, is you can put just what you need on and put it right where you need it. So now I'm going to pull this tight and tape it back together. Okay, and after the center here is set up, and again you need to remove the tape. You want to be careful whenever you remove the tape because you don't want to peel the tape off the wing itself. And you also want to remove any of the epoxy because it will not stick to the tape, so it's actually easy to peel off. Now, since this is the bottom, we can tape it off, and now I'm going to show you how to do that. And again, you just want to make sure you got any loose epoxy off of here. And now we're going to tape it from the trailing edge here forward. I just want to mash that down and pull the tape so that it goes to the point. Mash the tape down and mash that around to the nose, just like that. And you can put a couple of layers of tape on here. And be sure that this gets taped as well. And again, you can let it go a little past the nose and just wrap it around, just like that. And mash the tape down really well. So that's the bottom that's been reinforced. Now we're going to reinforce the top, but before we reinforce the top, we need to cut this battery hatch out. Just like this. Now this will be the battery hatch. Now we can reinforce the front side, or the top, again by the tape. We're just going to put the tape flush with the front and come back to the hole. And here you can see I've made the tape a little bit long, actually about 2 inches long. That may be a little long, but what I want to do is press that inside and then push it back so it's down on the bottom there now. So I've taken this tape and run from this edge here over and back under, and I'm going to do that twice. Again, I cut the tape a little long so that I can push it under and fold it back. So now the tape runs back along here on the underside. So that really reinforces this area. Now for the front up here, we're going to run the tape this way. So I want to cut a piece about 4 inches long and run it right across the top, just like that, right across here. And then I'm going to take this and pull it under, just like that. And then I'm going to push this down and we're going to pull that under. And we're going to do it just like that. And we're going to do this twice. So we'll do a second piece. Again, about 4 inches long. Put it across the front and pull it down and under. And the same thing on the other side. Just pull it under and push it down. So now we've taped off the bottom double and the top, both on the front and the back, with double tape. So now we've really reinforced this area. Next, we're ready to glue in parts of the firewall, and we're going to do that one piece at a time. Okay, here I'm going to try to give you a close-up of what I'm actually doing, and I've mixed up the epoxy, and of course this time I'm not going to be using my pastry bag technique, because what I want to do is spread just a real thin layer of epoxy over this area here, and then I'm going to add one piece of the firewall. So I'm going to put a thin layer of epoxy on it with the tab sticking out, and I'm going to put it in the center. So it's going to be like that. Just like that. Now I need to mash that down. A tip, it's really important that that be flat. So what I've done is I'm going to take and put a piece of something in underneath here, and then I can put weight on top of it, which will mash that piece down. And then I'm going to just adjust it slightly, because I want to make sure that it's in the center, and I want to make sure the tabs are out. Give you a look at this one here. This one I just glued in. Now we're going to flip it over. We're going to glue the next one in. And again, we're just going to coat the area where the piece is going to go. I just want to put a thin, just a real thin layer of epoxy on here, because that's actually going to help strengthen this area too. So I'm just thinning that out really thin, and then again I'm going to coat the wood. Just a real thin layer, not very much, because I got it on the foam already. And now I'm going to set this one in place. Again, putting it in the center and having the tabs sticking out past the foam. And I'm going to put my little piece of stuff in here on top, and that's just so that it puts even pressure down on it. And then we're going to put some weight back on it. Okay, now we can take this off and check our fit here. You have a piece that has the notches in it, and now we're going to glue this one in place. And there is a little play built into this, so you don't have to get those perfect, but the closer you get them to center, the better it'll be. And then once we glue this on, we let that set and cure out, and then we glue the final piece over the top of it, which will be another one of these, and it glues right over the top. This piece goes right over the top, just like that. And we just want to make sure that it's flush on all four sides. And there it is. While I'm waiting on the epoxy to cure on the firewall, I'm going to go ahead and prep the winglets and my elevons. So the first thing you got to do is decide whether or not you're going to use half or the full width. And I always use half. So what I need to do is split. For my application, I'm going to split the one of the winglets in half, and this is just going to give me an extra one later. Whenever if I find that I need to replace it, I will have a second set, and you can just cut these off and replace the old one with a new one. The next thing you need to do is remove the film, and I found the best way to do it is just use the tape. So put the tape on there and pull it off, and you're actually lifting the paper just like that. So now the same thing, I'm just going to put it on, and I'm going to remove the film. Now here we go. This is more like it. This is usually the way it comes off. It wants to come off in pieces. So now here's the bevel that's in it. I'm going to tape from here back, and I'm going to tape from the edge back, and it's going to be just a little piece of tape that's going to miss right here. We're not going to worry about that. So put it right on the edge there, just mashing it flat. Now you can see the tape went right here on the edge and right there on the edge. So now I'm going to cut this off, and I'm going to cut this off, and now I'm just going to take this part here and roll back on the trailing edge. You can cut it off if you want to, but I've just started rolling it back. Now I'm going to tape the other side, and I'm going to go from the bevel back on both sides. Just like that. Once again, I'm going to cut it off here. I'm going to cut it off here. And now I'm going to take this and just fold it back onto the other tape. So now the tape's wrapped around here, but here again I'm missing that much, and I'm not going to worry about that. So I'm missing that much on this side too. So now this one here is taped off and it's done. Now I'm going to do my red one, because again my right aileron is always red. And again, I have this much that does not get covered. So now my ailerons are done. They're taped top and bottom. You don't have to tape the tips, but it's a good idea to make sure you pull the film off. Here I'm going to show you how I go about mounting the control surface using Blendrum tape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the tape on the control surface, about maybe 1/4 of an inch, 5/16 of an inch. And then I'm going to cut it on each end so that I have a straight piece of tape there. I'll do it like that and like this. Now I'm going to take this. This is the top side and the bevel is on the bottom. So now I'm going to take this and lay it on the wing. And I'm going to pay attention to the tip, because I want this edge to be back about 1/16 of an inch from this tip. And you can go back a little bit more if you want, but 1/16 should give you plenty of clearance. And then I'm just going to set it down and then push the tape down. And now I have it, and if we take a look here, we should have about 1/16 of an inch gap between the tip and the end here, and that's perfect. Now I'm going to lay this over, and I'm going to put another piece of Blendrum tape right on the bottom side, and I'm actually going to tape this piece here to the trailing edge. So now I'm going to put the Blendrum on the bottom side. I'm going to put it right on the trailing edge here. I'm only going to be about 1/8 of an inch onto the edge, and I'm only going to go back as far as the control surface goes, which is going to be about right here. So now I'm going to hold this, and I'm just going to work the tape down the trailing edge of the wing and then onto the control surface, and then I'm going to wind up with about 1/16 of an inch on top of the surface, just like that. So now I mash that down good, and now I have one aileron mounted. Okay, here you can see I've got both the control surfaces installed. Now I'm ready to install the wingtip. Okay, a couple of tips on the wingtips. I take one wingtip and cut it in half, and that gives me a spare set of wingtips. But what I do is, in order to glue this on, is I take the bottom of the wing and put the wingtip so that I have about 1/4 of an inch back here from the trailing edge of the aileron to the edge of the wingtip, and then I tape it so that it's flush on the bottom side of the wing. And then whenever the epoxy cures, then I go ahead and trim the front of this to match the shape of the wing. The other thing is, this is going to be a night flyer, so I'm going to run a set of wires off of the lighting, and I'm going to actually put a set of lights across the inside and across the outside. I'll have green on one side and red on the other, and that'll help keep me oriented with the wing. I've got everything prepped in order to epoxy not only the horns in place, but also my servos. And if you look close here, you can see that I've actually removed the film and the tape underneath where the ears are going to go for the servo, and I've done that on both sides. And here you can see really good that I did remove the tape around the area where the horn is going to go, and on both sides. So it's very important that you remove the tape, because the epoxy will not stick to the tape or the film. In the video I had cut out this battery hatch, and this actually is going to be thrown away. We don't use the battery hatch. The battery will sit in this compartment here, and there's no room to put a hatch on it. Plus, having this open lets air flow through the wing and actually helps cool the motor. The CG from the point back 8 7/8 is where the CG needs to be. What I do is I will draw a line from the point back 8 3/4 and from the point back to 9 inches, and I will run those two lines parallel with the edge here, and then I will use a jig or a CG fixture and then set the model on it with the battery in it, and move the battery back and forth until I get the model to balance on those between those two marks, which the center of will be 8 7/8. Here's a look at the spar for the night flyer, and what I've done is just run the lights on either side of the spar. So the front, the leading edge is going to glow blue, and the trailing edge is going to glow white. But I joined the two strands at the tip, and then I've pigtailed off, and I'm going to slide the spar in. Now this one I've already built, so what I recommend you do is to go ahead and put the lights on before you fold it over and glue it. But this one was an afterthought, and so I'm having to do it the hard way, but actually it's turned out pretty easily. So now what I'm going to do is slide the spar back in, put it back in the pockets, and then solder up the lights. Now you can see with a little bit of effort I was able to put the spars back in even after the trailing edge had been glued. It did take a little bit of work, but I was able to do it, and no damage to the wing in doing so. The leading edge is blue and the trailing edge is white.